Hello everybody and welcome to another Beyond All Reason video. Today we have a 1v1 versus the legends that are rAndy and Mr. Autopilot. Now rAndy over here playing in red as Cortex, and on the right hand side in blue we also have Autopilot also going Cortex. Now as we quickly zoom out on this map is called Command Center, if I remember correctly. Oh, Center Command, I was close. And there are some very, very key important things about this map. First things first, this map is made to be a 2v2, with initial start positions being in the corners of the map, as signified here. And as you can also see, there are geo spots just off to the side of the start position. But one of the most key important parts of this map is the tiny tidal pools. These little pools of water here, and as you can see on the map, they're big black kind of spots on the map, are small, very tiny areas of water. And on this map, water generates a tidal speed of 75. So for a single water generator, tidal generator here, you can see it is producing 75 energy, which is a tremendous amount of energy to come from one single energy producing building, especially in the T1 phase. So as you can see here, if we select this guy here, that is the same as an advanced solar. So that's 370 metal, 4,000 energy, where if you built it from the commander here, 85 to 250. So you are saving so many resources from that. And what this means is that both players are going to have less of a problem getting energy in the early stages. Going to have to spend less resources on building up an economy, because you're kind of getting one provided for you, but from the map. And then also just being able to kind of, spend that more on units. Now, another thing, as we can quickly see Autopilot already doing, is that on the north and south parts of the map in the center here, we see a 630 metal reclaim available in these rocks. And Autopilot has basically beelined directly for that with his res bots, and is just prioritizing getting that metal. That is a huge chunk of metal. When you think about it combined, that's 1,200-ish metal. And that's going to make a huge impact when you look at like how much, for example, a Tech 2 lab costs. 2,900. That's basically half the cost of a Tech 2 lab. Now, he's probably not going to invest that into a Tech 2 lab this early on. That would be very ridiculous. But it is going to give a significant advantage to unit production for Autopilot, meaning he's going to be able to do a lot more. And you can already kind of see that taking place right now, as we see Autopilot having a significant advantage along the top and bottom sides when it comes to units. Autopilot having a significant military advantage right now as opposed to rAndy. And that means rAndy is already starting to fortify his chokehold in the middle here. So we can see he's trying to hold here. Now, obviously he's missing out on 2 additional max points there, but it is a smaller kind of point for him to defend. Now, I would kind of want to defend... Let me remove those drawings. I would kind of want to defend there and there, because for your units, you don't have far to travel to defend either side, but you get 2 additional max points, and there's a Geo there. Both players are Cortex, so he could end up eventually building a Cerberus there, but I would argue that that's probably not very efficient, just due to the fact that, the Cerberus is only going to be able to shoot like that. It's not really going to do much. But now another thing key about this map, a good fight going along at the top there. Surprisingly, Autopilot actually is in an advantageous position. Another key thing about this map, whilst that little tiny fight is taking place, is these cliffs. Obviously, this is going to block radar line of sight, and if we select the one here from rAndy, you can kind of see that his radar was positioned in a very good position to kind of give these side directional radar. But it's this game, if you're new to Bar especially, it's not like Supreme Commander. You build one radar and you can see everything in its AoE. Radars get blocked by a line of sight, which means that this radar obviously can't see into the base of rAndy. So players getting any form of radar up onto this like middle high end section, or even on these cliffs, will give a very, very good like radar coverage if they decide to go for some form of air. Now, as you can tell here, both players have started off as bots, but we actually see a transition over to vehicles from Autopilot. And this is going to give him a bit more survivability in the front. And he does technically still have a bit of a army value bonus right now. But when you see metal produced, in the grand scheme of things, that number that was, 1,200 difference now, with Reclaim and stuff that rAndy's managed to get from fights that he's managed to reclaim, he's actually managed to claw that back to only about 500 metal difference. So the early advantage that Autopilot had from that metal not really paying off as much as he hoped. He does still have a significant army advantage right now, but it's mostly from all of the units that are at the bottom. They're not really able to do much because of the commander being there. It does look like from the map here that Autopilot is preparing an attack with some vehicles prepared and some grunts as well, but he has just lost all of his forces on the north side, and that is a good chunk of 400 metal there just sat waiting to be eaten up, and that will put metal produced basically almost even again. Although saying that, somehow Autopilot has gotten 1,000 metal ahead again. I missed something somewhere. Maybe he got reclaimed from something. I'm not missed. You see rAndy here desperately reclaiming as many trees as he can, needing the energy right now. D-Gun already taking out 2 tanks, and that's a big loss for Autopilot. It's a lot of metal just going up at smoke, and all rAndy lost was a LLT and a metal extractor. A transition over to vehicles as well from rAndy. This map is quite a lot of metal on it. Being a 2v2, it's obviously made for 2 people on either team to have metal, so by having that much, you can see both players deciding to kind of go for a 2-factory approach here. And you can see that Autopilot doing this very smartly here, sending his forces of bots up north and his vehicles down south. And this tidal generator now will get destroyed. Surprisingly enough though, Autopilot actually not building the tidals on his side whatsoever, leaving both of them open. His commander is the only one that can build those tidals though, so I'd be quite surprised he's not going to just quickly stop and build that, but already desperately just trying to hold off for now. Autopilot does have a radar on the north. He can see this massive line of incisors, but his attention is elsewhere, hoping to try and force rAndy to bring his units back, but instead that's not the case, and Andy actually going on the offensive. Also offensive taking place right near his commander. This can be quite dangerous now. He does have units to defend. But I'd see this incisor push here should get cleaned up relatively easily. But this force, however, will get round and will actually be able to do some damage to Mr. rAndy. Oh, actual air coming out from Autopilot there. Self-destruct on the Geo, unfortunately, somewhat mistimed and doesn't manage to get the forces as he was hoping. These units will get destroyed here, but he does manage to clear up a good chunk of economy. Andy losing 4 metal extractors and a Geo. Autopilot's comm is a little bit exposed now with no forces, just a double LLT to support. And Andy managing to do, I mean, a fairly decent job as well. He managed to take out a good chunk of metal extractors, but it was no core economy. Didn't manage to get into the base, the energy production and such. Just taken out a couple of metal extractors, and actually the constructors here right on the front line building this Geo actually are still alive. And bombers now being produced from Autopilot. This map might prove somewhat difficult to bomb, with Tidal being a very strong energy source here, and the amount of Geos. There's a lot of energy production, like just map-based energy production. So it may be difficult for him to find something effective to bomb without just using his bombers to, you know, attack metal extractors on the front or bomb groups of units. He is aware that there is a hole down here now because of, you know, his units pushed round. But there's nothing really for him to attack. Andy falls to be very, very defensive right now. His shurikens not shurikens, his pistols trying to hit the shurikens, but not actually in range. Autopilot in a very, very strong position here, and getting that early metal basically put him in a position to hold this area, and that kind of is compounded over the match. We can see that metal produced here, it's quite a big difference. 4.7k at this point now. Bear in mind, you know, 100, oh sorry, not 100, 1,000 of that was from initial reclaim. Oh, dangerous move here. Andy's moved his whole army up north to stop this push, but with that he has left the entirety of his commander area completely exposed. The bombers did come in, do a bit of damage on metal extractors. Will they get another pass? One of them will, at least. Getting the energy converters. This bomb is still alive, but will not make it in time. And Autopilot actually being forced right back. Having a bit of problem now along the top side here. Shurikens are there, which will kind of slow it down. There are some lashers in the back line here, just a bit further behind the initial attacking force, which are dealing with the Shurikens, but has forced rAndy to pull back. And we are seeing some air constructors out here from Autopilot. Surprisingly not using all these high ground to build off of, but using them as a very, very quick transport method instead. Also, surprisingly, no artillery units out from either player just yet. Kind of makes sense from Autopilot's perspective, but from Andy's perspective, with all this like strong, solid defensive LLT wall here, could quite be easily build like, you know, just one artillery, slowly pepper the stuff down, force Autopilot to either keep his comm there repairing it all, or push in. Right now, rAndy has a very, very strong kind of unit wall here. 18 versus the, you know, 10 of Autopilot. His north side, however, is very, very weak here. There's a big chunk of reclaim to be had as well. 2.1, sorry, metal just here. And a lot of air constructors just got taken out there. And Andy actually deciding to go for Resurrection here, which will help turn the army tide. It is already now in Andy's favor, but all economy stats are currently on Autopilot's favor. Now, one of the reasons why army value has changed, as we can see here, is the transition over to Tech 2, and the very first unit to come out of the factory is a Tsar. Now, that's a very ballsy move. You see a push maybe coming here from rAndy. There is a lot of laser turrets here, but light laser turrets are not very good against tanks, and this is a big tank push. Pounders are going to do okay here at trying to keep some of these tanks back, but it's not going to be enough. Just need raw damage, and unfortunately there'd be no raw damage here. And just in the corner of our screen here, we can see the Tsar start to approach, and that massive cannon does huge damage, but it is very slow, and this has no air defense to help it. Lashers are a little bit too far behind for this push. Shurikens will actually get taken out, but with the Tsar there and a second one just behind it, see how much damage and AoE that Tsar has. But this transition over to Tech 2 has cost Autopilot dearly. He has lost a huge amount of ground. As you can see, Autopilot before was basically holding off here and here. He's now, this top side is going to fall like any second, and he's probably going to get pushed back to there and there of his own. And basically, roles have now reversed for Autopilot. And the first Tsar actually manages to get completely annihilated. Tech 2 factory has just started production for for Andy now. Tech 2 does get dealt with, and there goes a Geo as well. But look at this massive force of brutes here. Another 9 brutes about to barrel their way through. Question is, will they be able to get through? Unfortunately, running into wrecks of their own friends. And I think they're going to manage to get caught. Yeah, the Tsar being redirected here. Autopilot's comm taking a little bit of damage. I don't think this is anything to worry about, though. And we see here, actually, as we scroll out, that Autopilot actually pulling back his forces. He's doing a very good job here at consolidating the territory that he's just gained, resurrecting all the stuff that he'd currently lost along the front, and, you know, managed to kill himself, and this has helped him keep up. Army value, though, now back to very even, but it's kind of a interesting metric, army value, because it's purely based on basically the metal of the unit, I think, if I remember correctly. And obviously Tsars are super expensive, so one Tsar makes up a significant chunk of army value, even though, like, they are very effective units, don't get me wrong, but they're still not like, you know, I have, 20 tanks, I just have one Tsar. It's not quite the same. As we look here, a Tsar is 1,650 metal, whereas I can't look at Tech 1 tanks anymore, but a Tiger's 600. So you can get, in essence, roughly 3 Tigers for the cost of one Tsar, and that's, well, without the energy cost, because energy is much more efficient to build one Tsar than 3 Tigers. Both players now just kind of trying to consolidate. rAndy, I would argue, is in somewhat of a advantageous position right now. He has a significant amount of forces on this top line. Bottom line, he's a little bit exposed. Building a very cheeky radar jammer here. I think his plan is to build that, cloak his commander maybe, and then get prepared to degun the Tsar. Yep, literally exactly what he's doing. Radar jammer will kind of protect the commander from any sort of radar, and if we select autopilot here, he sees the radar jammer, but he doesn't know what's behind it. And if that Tsar gets anywhere near the commander, he is going to be able to degun it successfully. Tiger's unable to push in on the north side, and autopilot trying to reclaim some land here. Banishers. I love Banishers. They're one of my favorite Cortex vehicles. Just so fun to use. Hearing the swoosh noise as the rockets go off, one of my favorite things in Bar. Especially seeing them like chunk down the Tech 3 with how much damage they do. But it does seem like autopilot not willing to try and risk these units. Building some Banishers of his own, getting some radar jammers, moving up to the front here. Autopilot already having a radar jammer here, although they do only have small radiuses. Some of these units are out of radar jamming range as we select the unit here. Actually, no, they're all in, so that's fine. Grunts being fielded probably in front of these units when they do move forward to try and detect anything cloaky. Well, what do we see in bases as we're going to give a quick look over. So for autopilot, both of his geos are being converted over to the advanced geos, generating 1,250 energy. That is obviously the equivalent of a fusion reactor almost. And plenty of wind production for both players right now, especially autopilot. Only having one of his titles capped though right now. And his commander's basically just assisting his Tech 2 factory. Currently with 4 factories on the go, autopilot. That's quite a lot of factories to be pumping out at one time. And you can see he's basically very close to his metal income with how much he's using. Sometimes fluctuating a little bit over, but that's good economy management. But not really scaling his economy too much more right now. Still kind of expanding on some metal points that have been capped, it seems. Some scouts coming in, trying to spot whatever's cloaked by this cloak. That may spot the commander. It does. Whether autopilot saw that or not is a different matter, but rAndy is not risking it and he's pulling back. This may be very dangerous though. There's a lot of forces. Andy having to pull everything down now to deal with this push. Surprisingly though, Andy not actually going more into this fight than anything. Autopilot kind of just holding off, letting the units come to him. Does look like he's making a tiny bit of a push on the north to make up for this lack of movement on the south. There's a huge amount of artillery coming in from the rockets and from the Quakers there. And this looks like this may be some substantial losses for autopilot. One Tsar does go down. And Andy trying to stabilize now. The fortifications on the north side have been destroyed. Though it may have been an expensive loss on the bottom, it has made a bit of a chunk along the north, and now no more defense along that north side. Scout wave coming in from Andy here, maybe trying to see if there's any nukes or anything going up, but I don't think it's going to get through as we quickly check his vision here. No, all of the scouts get taken out. Massive fighter screen up already from autopilot. I say massive, it's big for 1v1. With Fortunately for Andy here, a lot of the Banisher's rockets are being taken up on single grunts that are coming in. And now flak coming out from Autopilot as well. Gonna make it very difficult for those shurikens to be put of use. And our Banishers doing what they do best, slowly whittling down the enemy from a super long range. A bit of a mistake here as a radar and the jammer gets very close to the front. Losing the radar now, but he does have an actual radar. But Andy in significant danger right now, getting pushed from the north and from the south. Only really a 1 SAR left on the north. Does Autopilot still have radar? Yes. SAR on the north having to be pulled back. Kind of surprising. I would have maybe pushed. There is a Tech 2 defense there. 2 Tech 2 defenses on the north. And Andy desperately trying to hold on here. Surprisingly, Autopilot is amassing a substantial force. Not going in for the kill. Maybe he thinks Andy has got a lot more than what he actually has. When it comes to economy stats, as you can see here, everything is in Autopilot's favor right now. Army value, damage, energy produced, metal produced. We're seeing about 800k energy production difference. Rough maths, you know, we're talking what? Oh, there you go. I can hover over this. A 36k metal difference. That is a humongous metal difference. And that means, as you can clearly see, Autopilot's able to invest in so much more. Base-wise, with the 4 factories on the go, the fighter screen that he's got, the anti-nuke already being built, he's just able to invest so much more due to having so much more metal available to him. But with all of that extra metal produced, he has not been able to make a breakthrough. A lot of it has been invested fairly recently into grunt scouts, which are basically getting insta-popped and not leaving any wreckage behind whatsoever. But right now, it's just an attempt to get a bit of a critical mass of units on this bottom side in order to make a push. You can see, actually, surprisingly enough, Autopilot building a bit of a defensive situation up top here. Probably planning to completely ignore this side. He does have advantage when it comes to metal extractors there, so that kind of makes sense. But this bottom side is very close. A Tsar did manage to get destroyed there as well, so no more Tsars left along the bottom. Some friendly fire actually taking place there, and a radar vehicle gets destroyed for Andy. This pop-up artillery here is going to deny these metal points as well to Andy, which is not good. We do actually see a radar up the top here. Surprisingly, no radars on this cliffside or anything else of significant value. I think Andy's kind of using these Tigers here purely as scouts. Pushing them in, kind of seeing what's there. There is a massive critical mass here of Banishers. You can see 13 Banishers there as opposed to 8 for Autopilot. But look what we've got in the base here. Here be dragons. A lot of dragons. And the question is how much impact is that going to have? The start of some basic fusion energy converters are going on. Bulwarks. Doomsdays is their old name. Bulwarks going up for a defensive position here for Andy, and Andy forced basically all game into being purely defensive. Anti-nukes also being built here by Andy. Bit of a safety measure. Now, the one issue with the Dragon's idea, banishers target air. And this is a significant amount of banishers. And is he sending them? Okay, if he sends them up like this, then they're not going to get hit by the banishers. If he sends them into the banishers, I don't know how long they're going to last. Unless his plan is to send all of these grunts in at once, absorb all of the missile shots, and then have the banishers fly over. They're only going to be so effective. Banishers now starting to fall back. Just see, oh, he's going for the commander. He has a rough idea of where the commander is. Unfortunately, it's not an exact position. Some damage now being done to the commander, but it's not enough. It was a risky play, but unfortunately, the spot is just off, and all of those dragons actually accomplish nothing. Andy's commander in in perfect health. I feel like that must have been radar wobble. He knows where the commander is. And as you can see here, the commander on the map is there. But it's not. It's actually in that crater. And because of that, he was just basically targeting the wrong spot. Very, very lucky for Andy. And that is completely down to radar wobble there. As you can see how much radar moving around. Now, if you're not sure what radar wobble is, I've got a very good video on that. It explains how the radar system works in Bar. But in essence, radar is not 100% accurate. And what you need to build in order to counter that is pinpointers. They have a different name for Armada, which I can't remember off the top of my head. But this reduces radar wobble for your entire team. You build 3 of these, radars are basically perfect, and you then don't have to worry about them anymore. But when you're using units that are like artillery, so let's say you build a bunch of Sheldons, to increase the damage output of them, it is advisable to build some pinpointers just to reduce that radar wobble a bit so you're actually hitting targets that you intend to hit. Now, you don't often see those in 1v1s, but in 8v8s or something like that, quite important. Both players have T3 now, as they both have the exact same idea. And we have Kraganov versus Kraganov. 2 Kraganavs versus 2 Kraganavs. Basically, that's going to account to nothing, as both players are probably just going to pull back with them. Now, there is one thing here. If Autopilot, with control of this north and southern flank, managed to get one of those Kraganavs over one of these hills, and then start pushing around, he would do significant damage to the economy. Also, he could kind of do the same around the top. Drawing problem there. Same around the top here, of sneaking around the top and getting around. This one, not so practical. He doesn't have units there to defend. Just the static defenses. And we're actually seeing a different in methodology here as well, as you see a catapult coming out from Andy here. Whereas, oh, actually, take that back. Catapult also coming out from Autopilot. But a push into static defenses. Instantly changed his mind as he realized there was a lot of static defenses there. Only losing 1 or 2 banishes for that trouble, but still enough to make a difference. Now, these catapults do need to be manually fired, otherwise they might end up causing a lot of friendly fire, or they're just going to waste their rockets, which both first volleys have actually done so far. Autopilot hasn't manualed his just yet. Now he has. And aiming for the factory and the commander is a good play at this point. It's going to force Andy to fall back and abandon that factory. Dragonaf's now being pulled into the fight. Unfortunately, Andy has no front line tech free here. He only has catapults and the Dragonafs, whereas obviously Autopilot has a substantial amount of Shivas. But a lot of explosion damage going on there. Big T3 constructor lost though, spotted by a spectator. Two Tech 2 constructors for some reason were very far forward, and that's cost them big time losing all of that. But what can either player do right now? I mean, when it comes to Autopilot, he is in a very strong position. Autopilot can still push Dragonaf around the hill down the bottom there, even around the top to get some good economy damage. Andy, on the other hand, I mean, Andy's in a very difficult position here. For Andy to pull this back, he needs to make some form of big play. Pushing his Dragonafs along the middle will force Autopilot to react, but with how far Autopilot is ahead right now, 3 million energy advantage, 93k metal advantage. You know, he's making so much more every single tick than Autopilot is. I don't know if he can pull this back. This is a lot of catapults though. They do a lot of damage. So you can see them slowly chunking away these Shivas here. I guess his plan is to just to kind of do as much long-range damage as he can. Both players deciding we're only going to focus along this bottom flank for now. A forward anti-nuke also being built here as well to kind of protect that north side. No player's actually going to build nukes though. But when we look at economy very quickly, we can see that, you know, advanced fusions being built by Autopilot here, still producing from 5 factories, whereas economy production has basically been put on hold for Andy. He cannot afford to be producing any more buildings that he currently has. He has to put everything into units just to defend right now. And because of that, I believe it's probably only a matter of time. Although, for some reason, we see a massive overflow of metal going on for our Andy right now. What's going on? Slight mistake here going on from Andy as he's told all of the construction turrets to repair this one Dragonaf as it's out of range. They've not been able to assist. That's going to put him behind. That's the reason why he is overflowing so much. The sheer amount of catapults he has is forcing Autopilot back, and Autopilot is losing tech freeze because of this. What I will say is when it comes to the balance of the game, it's just showing that, you know, it's getting to the point where both players, when it comes to tier 1 now, we're seeing more and more of these games that for the top players are actually end up going to tech 3, which, you know, a year ago or something like that, you would only ever see tech 1 mostly in all 1v1s, and then maybe tech 2 on the very rare occasion. But now, yeah, on a regular basis, seeing tech 3 in these pro 1v1s is a great sight to see. See, both players here, though, choosing not to go for any of the heavier armed units. Just going, surprisingly, Andy's just going pure catapults. And so far, surprisingly, it is working out. But, literally, as mentioned earlier on, Autopilot now trying to pull off the maneuver that I mentioned before. Andy has maybe not spotted it just yet. He is trying to build a bulwark, but that is not going to get built anytime soon. And this may actually be the end of Andy's base here if he's not able to deal with this. Now, as it comes to designing, these units are made to be fully transversable. They can go over any terrain, being spider-based units. Generally, when it comes to bar, any units that look spider-ish can go over all terrain possible. And Kragenovs are a prime example of that. And I believe Andy has only just noticed, desperately trying to run some tier 3 back here. But this is a lot of Kragenovs. His commander has to fall back as well. I'm curious as to if these are just set on attack ground. They are. All of these catapults are actually just set to target ground rather than actually targeting anything specific. And there goes that advanced geo. That's going to do a big amount of damage to the energy of Andy here. Andy misses the degun by accident. Oh, he walked into that. He's very lucky that that did not turn into his commander blowing up. But 2 Kragenovs still make it round. Andy is positioning his comm ready to get these 2, but they're going a slightly different route, and Andy hasn't moved his commander yet. And if they get the fusion, he'll only have the power of 1 fusion left. There is about to go the energy converter. Bulwark actually doing a decent job here. Surprisingly, this Kragenov does get the energy converter, but doesn't get the fusion. And this one along the north does a decent amount of damage, but realistically, that got the advanced fusion, not the advanced geo, and 3 metal extractors and an energy converter. That's it. Not as big of amount of damage as I was expecting. But I would argue that that's purely due to the reason that he spotted it. If you had some radar jammers up here, maybe even a Tech 2 radar jammer, that would make a big difference. What's he planning on building up here? Okay, now this is quite a smart move. Although with the Kragenovs, he could just walk right up here. But long-range plasma cannons be built right up on the top cliff here. I don't know if that's actually going to get built. I feel like these Kragenovs are going to walk up there and deal with that beforehand. Autopilot, though, still in a very strong position. Losing his frontline shield, Andy is. And these catapults, you know, not very good versus light stuff. Oh, and here we see some more Kragenovs moving along the bottom. They're going to get the other advanced geo. And with that, the only energy production, luckily enough for Andy, will be this advanced energy and the fusion. Yeah, those long-range cannons did not get built. Good amount of damage done here by Autopilot, using all-terrain units to an advantage. And realistically for Andy here, I don't see him really able to pull this back. He is trying to go for a bit of a Hail Mary here, pushing 5 Kragenovs through the middle. It's kind of all he can really do at this point. He's hoping to get a bit of damage done. A nuke launcher is being built as well by Mr. Autopilot, and it's finished actually, and is waiting to have the nuke built. Unfortunately, rAndy does have anti-nuke, but it's not really going to do too much. These Kraganaf surprisingly managed to make it through, but it's not going to do too much as 4 Kraganafs approach rAndy's base from the south. Build power starting to go up. A lot of metal extractors being destroyed here. These bulwarks built very close to some very explosive things. And just staying out of range of the bulwarks' other guns. Catapults do a surprising amount of damage. But that will manage to come around the back. Meanwhile, these Kraganafs surprisingly not managing to get as far as you'd hoped, probably. Getting surrounded by grunts here. There's a just sheer number of units getting pushed out. Autopilot actually bringing everything back, including all those Shivas. I don't know if that was a mistake or not. There's 1 Kraganaf left. Andy maybe hoping to get this advanced geothermal. Not really going to matter too much with the amount of energy production that Autopilot now has. He's expecting to keep this thing alive. It doesn't. And at least with that destruction, there's no wreck left behind, but that did not matter Autopilot at all. With already having 6 advanced advanced fusions, rather, it's not a problem whatsoever. Now, one thing of note though is that this is leaving a lot of wreckages in rAndy's base. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Kraganafs, 7 ready to be resurrected. But still, it is predominantly in Autopilot's favor here. And I honestly don't see a way for the well-known player that is rAndy to bring this back. Both players have the exact same tools here, being the same faction. So it's purely down to player skill as to who wins. No unit advantages or anything like that. And he does have a significant catapult advantage. Relying on sending grunts forward though to be vision. There's a big force of Tech 3 now, another 6 Kraganafs coming over the top hill, and 6 Shivas as well. There are 2 bulwarks being built and 2 pop-up scorpions. When you look at Autopilot's energy, is he able to defend effectively? One Shiva already gone. Yes. Managing to defend that very well. Bottom side is still, you know, very, very, very fragile. There is 1 nuke ready. I don't see it being very useful. He knows the anti-nuke is there. I don't know where he would plan on using it. He would have to somehow take out the anti-nuke. I'm just trying to think how rAndy's planning on using all of these catapults. Like, at the moment, he's just building a ridiculous amount of res bots, which is a good call. He's got a lot of Tech 3 in his base. But, neither player really able to make any form of dent here. We can see Autopilot is preparing his next plan. He is going for dragons again. He has also got gunships this time as well. There's a few gunships laying around elsewhere as well. And this is a lot of dragons. What he's probably going to do then is he's going to use those dragons to take out the anti-nuke, then use the nukes that he's got to bomb the base. With Andy not having a Tech 2 lab anymore, it is a very smart move. If you were playing as Armada, you'd probably use atomic bombers to do the exact same thing. There's one final decisive strike. These hills as well do cause a bit of an issue for nukes, as nukes may end up hitting the hill depending on where they've been targeted. So by both players having their base like in this sort of position, it does open them up to that sort of strike. I am somewhat surprised there's no like long-range plasma cannon here. It may be able to strike like that. Might quite roughly know the range right now. Let's have a look. Yeah, so if he built one here, he'd be able to quite easily strike into that base, hit that Tech 3 lab. And it would be in a very defendable position that he wouldn't have to worry about it. Which, saying that, you know, this is also a thing that Andy could do. I don't know if he's got any air Tech 2s left, but, you know, we can select the same Tech 2 box we just had and place another one up here. Where we go? Being up on a high ground means it can probably ignore. I mean, it'd be able to hit the tier 3 lab, but down here would be the best spot for it if we could possibly fit it. Actually, no, this would still be better. But neither player going for that route. Both players swarming grunts out. Autopilot asking himself and spectators watching, how many dragons do I need? Currently building this 16th one. You would think 16 dragons should be enough, but bear in mind, all of these Krakenafs are also AA. And surprisingly, he doesn't have too much AA. He's got a bunch of flax, quite a lot of flax. But this southern side is completely exposed, and if he goes that same path again, he should be fine. Walls being built around the Geo, surprisingly. Now, this map is known to be very, very choke pointy. And we're seeing that kind of personified in this match. With the sheer amount of static defenses and long-range catapults that are being built purely to just cause problems for each other over long ranges. No one's really pushing in at all. Radar jammers won't do anything in this situation either, with both players just sending lots of units forward. They're just the ones providing the vision. Doesn't care about them actually doing anything. Surprisingly though, using those over like vehicle scouts, probably just purely because grunts have a little bit more health, maybe survive a single hit like some of these are, and to hopefully, you know, be able to shoot back, do a little bit of damage. And it is slowly working. This armed metal extractor is slowly getting destroyed. Although, for a brief second, it had 69 kills, which is very nice of it. But it does get taken out there by the catapults. And a very strong grouping of Krakenafs now pushing over the middle hill. Unfortunately, at the very same time, we see the swarm of 20 dragons, as there's 2 Tech 2 air labs flying towards Andy's base. But we can see these Krakenafs taking out this dragon very, very quickly. And one dragon is already dead before it gets anywhere close. And surprisingly, this large group of Krakenafs actually able to make a dent in that front line. But Krakenafs are slow. A lot of them now have been killed up on this hill. And with that, here come the dragons. And I'm expecting that anti-nuke to be gone. And then as soon as that anti-nuke's gone, here comes the nuke. But all the economy goes up as well. And that is definitely going to be GG, as there is no way Andy can bring this back after that. Commander hiding in the corner. If that advanced Geo gets hit, the commander will also be dead. Not even really a need for Autopilot to nuke. And with that, Andy designs. The nuke does come in, but unfortunately nothing left to nuke. Interesting match. It just shows how, like, early advantages can compound even further if you kind of let them. And although Andy did manage to almost pull back on resources, because he didn't have control of the ground around him, he was not really able to capitalize on any of those metal points. And you could see that Autopilot had, you know, an extra base's worth, 2 bases worth of triple metal extractors outside of his base that Andy was never able to get. And that slow growth of economy just managed to, you know, exponentially put Andy even further and further behind as the game went on. And unfortunately, due to the map, the way the map is as well, it was very difficult for Andy to try and make any sort of comeback. But thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more bar content. And I'll see you guys next time.